Good Sunday evening, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center with this live update on the tropics, on Hurricane Marco, on Tropical Storm Laura. We're watching the situation very carefully because there's a lot going on here. We have a lot in the picture to talk about. So, first off, let's talk about our tropical storm here as we get over toward Laura because that system does have a potential here to maybe rapidly intensify in the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see the track here. You can see maybe a Category 2 storm as we get further on in toward the Gulf. So something to continue to watch very carefully. And we'll just be doing that here in the Weather Center as we do go ahead and get on in here. You see a lot of this thunderstorm activity pretty well defined despite being close to land here. So something we have to just watch pretty carefully as this system could again rapidly intensify in the Gulf. Our other system that we're keeping an eye on here is of course Hurricane Marco. That's a more imminent threat here to us, and you can see that thunderstorm activity is kind of spreading out some. So something that's kind of intriguing to see here. We're going to go ahead and show you what is happening right now in terms of this recon data. I know we're losing a few frames, but we're just trying to give you that latest satellite information. So again, you can kind of see how things are spreading on out in the Gulf of Mexico while we have more activity off toward the north and east here. We'll just have to continue to see how things go. And this does not mean we're getting local impacts directly here as we get into north central Florida. This means the storm's kind of spreading out its moisture here, and you're seeing some of that rain across the region even. So we're going to go and take satellite off now. We're going to pull up the Doppler radar technology, and we'll be able to see what is happening with that here as we switch over. We're looking at some rotational tools we have earlier, but now we're going to pull up some of this rain here. You see it on the viewpoint, and as we get down toward parts of Taylor County and toward some of these other areas, I know Levy, there's a significant weather advisory now, so that's something to take note of there as well. So I know we're monitoring that pretty carefully here, and we're going to continue to keep an eye on things as things do move along, as again we have a lot going on in the picture. I know we're losing some frames, but we're just trying to give you that latest information here, so that can sometimes happen as we get some of those things loaded on in. So again, we're continuing to watch the tropics and seeing some of this moisture thrown on up here. As we get toward Big Bend, you see some of this moisture as we get down off of Franklin County, off of Wakulla. I know they've already had quite a bit of rain toward Apalachicola today. As we look back over the past 12 hours or so, Apalachicola, the radar has estimated upwards of 10 inches of rain in that general vicinity, and I know over 6 inches has been measured. So something interesting to see there, getting those totals up pretty high as the situation does move along. Just have to be cognizant of maybe some flash flooding. There was a flash flood warning earlier in play for parts of Franklin County, as just getting torrential rain coming on in, but it's a pretty isolated situation as I broaden the view out. Some you see not very much rain overall in most spots. A few spots here, southern Georgia, getting into the max, and you see as we get east of Adel, northwest there of areas like Homerville, north of Lakeland, getting upward there of 4 inches according to radar estimates. But overall, we've seen rain that's fallen here. It's been a pretty isolated situation overall in terms of some of the higher amounts. We'll continue to watch here to see again how things do evolve. There's also a tornado threat, as you can see here on the mapping in the green color. We're going to continue to watch here as you look toward the Gulf Coast. You see south there of New Orleans, maybe later tonight and tomorrow, maybe spreading in some with Marco. This is kind of an odd situation here. I know we have to just be cognizant because with this system, it could kind of weaken as it gets closer to the coast. I know I was kind of alluding to it in my description, which storm be stronger potentially as we get closer toward the Gulf Coast, and that'll probably be Laura, just based on the environmental conditions. It'll have a better chance to take advantage of some of those that are around, like warmer water temperatures, as Marco is going to kind of get torn apart here as we get closer toward the coast. And that's some good news, but we're going to have that storm surge threat that'll still remain. Tornado threat here as well. Maybe some flooding too, that the models aren't overly ambitious about rainfall totals. We've already seen a lot toward Apalachicola, so it's reasonable to think that we could have totals similar to that in some more flood-prone areas there as we get towards southeast Louisiana. And we'll again continue to give you those updates. You see Laura, as we look toward that track here, you see maybe a Category 2 storm headed toward parts of Louisiana. I know things get kind of cluttered here, but we're going to have to just watch. You see that icon up near Shreveport. That's as we get later there into toward Thursday with Laura. So just something to be cognizant of for sure. And we'll be monitoring things as the evening does move along here to see if there's any tornadic action around. I'll go ahead and put on some of our model data right now as we get local here. As you're watching maybe from North Florida or South Georgia and you want to know how this might impact the evening with some of this moisture being drawn up. Again, not really a direct impact, maybe getting more of a direct impact as we get closer towards some of those counties in the Florida Panhandle, at least getting into a band, something like that. But as we get closer toward our area, you see this is what the forecast model does display here right about now, and we're going to go ahead and put on the model super there just to kind of let you know what you're looking at. If you're just kind of tuning in, this is not the current readout per se. We're just trying to see what could happen as we look ahead. You see more moisture as we get into the Gulf of Mexico kind of coming on up here, and we'll just have to continue to watch that as you maybe see some action trying to pop there in the Big Bend later on. Just have to see if anything becomes tornadic real quick, maybe a water spout coming on shore, something like that, as we get here later into the overnight hours even. This is about 1 a.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. We're just kind of watching the model data. So maybe some action there near the coast that could rotate. Nothing too extreme, but just right at the coast, just be mindful that it might be a good idea to have a way to get some weather alerts there overnight, because you could have some of those being issued by the National Weather Service in Tallahassee. You see later into the night even more of that rain around could add just some of that flooding there in the Big Bend as well. You see as we get toward Franklin County, some heavier rainfall occurring there according to this model. So just something that we'll be continuing to track here in the Weather Center. As I pull on the current Doppler again, you see some of this moisture around, so we'll go ahead and take the forecast model super off now, and you're seeing again some of this rain around that's going to be drawing on up. Now as we get over to our Hurricane Center information, I do want to apply this out again, and we're going to add some other things. We're going to take some things away in terms of those wind radii details, but as we get over toward some icons here, we have some hurricane models in play, and you see that they're kind of cluttered up here, but one of these has this as a Category 4 storm approaching maybe southeast Texas as we get later into the period. So that's something you really need to watch here, folks. You really need to pay attention to that because that could be something that is not what you want to see, as that is a possibility with this getting over some of those more warmer water temperatures there, and also getting into more of a favorable environment to strengthen overall maybe a stronger storm than what the Hurricane Center is predicting. Again, they have it at a Category 2 right now. As it approaches, maybe winds to 105 maximum sustained, which is really significant still for many spots. But if you get even higher, you get that major hurricane that classification there. So you just want to be mindful of that, as we are in the peak season here for these storms to be around. As we look here at our tropical climatology, you can see as we get towards September, hurricane season, you can really tell that we're right there in the most active part pretty much as we get into September. So you just kind of want to be cognizant here as things do move along, because things are expected to be active as we look ahead. Now, as we get toward Hurricane Marco, a cone perspective on this now, you start to see that hurricane warning in this red color here. This is a hurricane warning there from Morgan City in Louisiana to the mouth of the Pearl River. Maximum sustained winds at the last check 75 miles per hour. Under the Hurricane Hunter, are going to be getting more valuable information out of this, as we see the movement there north-northwest at 13 miles per hour. That minimum pressure 991 millibars. It's actually a little bit lower than what it was at this time yesterday. So something to watch here. The storm's supposed to really be kind of weakening, and the satellite does suggest that, but we'll be interested to see exactly what the Hurricane Hunters do find out here, as we also have tropical storm warnings off toward the east inward coastal Mississippi, and even a tropical storm watch as we get closer toward Mobile. So something to keep our eyes on. Hurricane watches in some areas that are not under hurricane warning in those light pink areas. And then you see our most likely arrival time for some tropical force winds. This is an important graphic here to show, because as we get toward early Monday, Monday at 8 a.m., you see some of this action here maybe coming on into the picture because of some of the wind, the energy that's kind of coming out of the system, and we have to just be ready there in southeastern Louisiana because of some of this moisture here, and some of that could translate some of this wind energy down to the surface. So we just want people to be ready there in this area by these times, and you just still have to be thinking about maybe a second storm coming back behind us, even if it looks like it might go further west. We just want you to go ahead and be ready, so go ahead and wrap up those preparations tonight. Already getting some showers moving on through there, but I just want to go ahead and wrap up those preparations here tonight. And we also have to be cognizant of storm surge, which could end up being one of the bigger threats based on this track here. It's a storm surge warning that's in play right now from Morgan City, Louisiana to Ocean Springs, Mississippi here. You see 4 to 6 feet of storm surge expected as we're looking between about Morgan City and it looks like the mouth of the Mississippi River. So we just want people to be really cognizant of this. That's pretty significant. Some other areas here, I'll step out of the way real quick and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about here. With this overall scenario, we do have about 3 to 5 feet there on the storm surge as we get towards some of these other spots. So you'll be just wanting to watch here as we get further out toward the east, even with some of this potential coming into the picture. Again, we'll continue to watch things here with the tropical weather outlook, and we'll just give you those latest details on that system and Laura as well, as we see 60-mile-per-hour maximum sustained winds right now, movement of west-northwest about 21 miles per hour, pressure at 1,000 millibars, and this is probably the one to watch here, folks. This is probably the system to watch as you see maybe a hurricane here coming in toward parts of Louisiana as we get in towards the Wednesday, but it could also be in southeast Texas, the Houston area. Can't let their guard down there. If you're watching from the Houston area, have interest in that area. Just got to pay attention to this because some models showing a even more significant scenario evolving here is getting toward Houston. This is something they got to be really cognizant of as we have those tropical storm warnings already down toward Cuba, tropical storm watch as we get toward parts of the Keys. But we just want to be getting people up to date here as we look toward that Gulf Coast. As right now, maybe a Cat 1 there, some impacts in toward Louisiana from our system that we're tracking with Marco. Again, this might have skirted the coast even. You kind of saw it with the track. Didn't really get into too much detail with it, but some of the models just have it kind of really breaking down here. And if it kind of skirts like that, they won't even get the worst of the impacts there in terms of some of those winds as the system's weakening, and that would be some good news for everybody. But our other system seems like it'd have more of a direct impact, and it could cause some extensive damage even. Category 2 storm there is what's being predicted right now. Max sustained winds about 105 miles an hour, so not that much stronger of a storm. You could have a Category 3 here, and we just want people to be ready for that potential, and that would be a devastating impact there. Even some areas are probably devastated by a Category 2 just based on some vulnerabilities, so you have to just be ready there. That storm surge could be an issue. Get to this list pretty fast here with Laura and Marco on that storm name checklist, I guess you could call it. Unfortunately, having to check them off, cross them off here. And this season running through November 30th, you see some comparisons here. I know it's been interesting to talk about here with some of these systems that we've been seeing in the tropics lately, seeing some of the overall setups here maybe with these storms being closer together. And we did have a scenario back in 2004 with Tropical Storm Bonnie. It made landfall on a Thursday, August 12th, and this was about 10 a.m. St. Vincent, St. George Islands area there in the Panhandle and the Big Bend. 45-mile maximum sustained winds, 45-mile-per-hour maximum sustained winds there. And this was a system that did not end up having too big of an impact, but there was a hurricane warning in play at one point. But Charley, the next day, much bigger impact. So we have seen within about a 24 to 36-hour period or so, we've seen an impact here from 2 different storms along the Florida coast, even the Florida Gulf Coast. So it's something that's pretty unprecedented, but it has happened before here. Storms occurring pretty quick in a pretty similar spot, and a scenario like this does seem like it'd be feasible to occur here as we get toward the Gulf Coast. Not for these spots, of course, but I'm talking about other areas as we get further along the coast. As we'll go back to our other system again, we'll just see what I'm talking about there and kind of give you a perspective on what is happening here with this. As you see the path here, maybe a couple days apart, as one maybe even be a little weaker as some of these models are suggesting here. You see some of these red models only keeping this as a tropical storm for Marco, but maybe a Cat 2 for our other system, Laura. That makes more sense to me. Maybe a stronger system than what's being forecasted out of Laura, maybe a weaker system out of Marco. So you just have to stay tuned, have the hurricane plan up to date if you're in this area along the Gulf Coast. I know there's a lot going on here. We're trying to give you that latest information to keep you, your friends, your family safe here, even if you're not in this area, maybe watching here from another area and you do have some relatives there. We just want you to know what's happening to make sure you give them the latest details. I'll be back tomorrow as necessary because as the system gets closer, there could be some more impacts here that people need to know about as we get into this area. So if I need to cut in throughout the day tomorrow as necessary, I will. Even if we get some tornadoes spinning up, of course, in some of our areas there as we get toward the Big Bend, I'll be cutting in tonight here as well if that's necessary. But otherwise, if I don't need to cut in before then, I'll see you back tomorrow on 6 o'clock in that 6 o'clock hour with the latest information on the tropics, on these systems. Thanks so much for tuning in and have a great night.